Welcome to Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM's POTUS.
Welcome to Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM for Thursday, January 16th. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm joined today by RCP co-founder and president Tom Bevan and senior elections analyst Sean Trendy. So, guys, last night, President Biden gave his farewell address to the nation. It was not a long speech, under 15 minutes, and here's just a little bit of what he had to say.
You know, his farewell address, President Eisenhower spoke of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He warned us then about, and I quote, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power, end of quote. 6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech-industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well.
So, Tom, clearly he's trying to draw this parallel between his speech and the Eisenhower speech from 1961. What'd you make of the speech overall, and what do you make of the tech industrial complex? Is that a phrase we're going to be using for the next 20, 30 years?
I don't know. I'm certainly the Democrats and the folks in the sort of legacy media will glom on to that phrase. Look, we talked about, sort of previewed his speech yesterday and, talked about how he would try and frame his legacy as positively as possible. He did some of that. And then he turned to this tech industrial, the coming of the oligarchy, which, I mean, for anybody who's been alive over the last 4 years, it's just so preposterous. I mean, he just gave the Medal of Freedom to George Soros, right? He had all of these tech oligarchs were in his corner 4 years ago. Mark Zuckerberg, contributed 400 million Zuck bucks to these local agencies that ended up helping benefit him win that election. It was his administration that helped, or members of the deep state that kind of helped manipulate social media and censor. So, I mean, it just rings so hollow to me that suddenly he's now very, very concerned. And the obvious, I mean, it was obviously just a partisan shot at Elon Musk, and the fact, I think, that Zuckerberg said he was just going to get out of the fact-checking business, and the fact that, Jeff Bezos is playing nice. All of these folks are now suddenly playing nice with Trump since he won. So in that sense, it seemed kind of partisan and petty. It didn't seem real to me. It seemed like just a political ploy that he had cooked up to kind of throw a little bit of mud on his way out the door.
Yeah, later in the show, I'm going to talk to Charlie Tidmarsh, who writes our This Week in Censorship column, and we're going to talk about this fact-checking thing in particular. But I'm wondering, Sean, what you made of the speech, and again, this phrase, the tech, what is it, the tech...
Industrial complex.
It's not rolling off my tongue, but clearly he was aiming for a legacy here. It seemed to me almost more than trying to sort of justify his last 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway from it, honestly, was he just sounded really old and really tired. And I think that's ultimately the legacy of this administration, is someone who just didn't get out when he should. I mean, he was stumbling over words, even things that were not things you should stumble over. But to this, I mean, Tom kind of said it all on this tech industrial complex stuff. How are you supposed to take it seriously when, like, we were supposed to be, Democrats were, if they played football, they would be literally spiking the football during the Obama years over the fact that, like, the tech bros were solidly in Obama's corner, and he was, a visionary in the use of cell phones and other technologies, Facebook groups and everything. How are we supposed to take it seriously? Like, now all of a sudden these tech billionaires are supposed to be a threat to our democracy. Especially after there's loads and loads of evidence that when they were doing fact checking, that Zuckerberg's flat straight on that there was a partisan valence to it, that his administration was pressuring fact checkers to rule one way or another on them, and to pressure social media to remove voices they didn't like. That second half of the speech was just impossible to take seriously, I thought.
And Tom, what did you make of this sort of Statue of Liberty metaphor that was sort of woven through the speech? Again, sort of aiming for some soaring oratory there. Do you think he reached Reagan-esque heights there?
I wouldn't say Reagan-esque heights. I mean, I didn't have a problem with it. It wasn't what I would have done or the speech that I would have written or had given if my speechwriters handed it to me. But it was fine. I mean, I understand what he was trying to do, but I think to Sean's point, even that from the very beginning, I mean, he was kind of slurring and stumbling through parts of this address, and it was just impossible not to notice that, I mean, this is what we've come to know now that the wagons have been uncircled and the media has actually been somewhat critical of Biden, and we know now that there were concerns about him even just shortly after he took office. It's impossible to unsee that and to think to yourself that this is a gentleman who is old, and he's kind of limping out of office, as we talked about yesterday, with really, really low approval ratings. Right after we recorded our show yesterday, we had, I think, 2 or 3 polls come out that showed him at his low, certainly in the CNN poll, and in our average, he's near his all-time low. So, he's going out with sort of a whimper rather than a bang.
Yeah. Sean, there was this mention of when he was sort of giving this sort of dark future that he's got to stop people in Congress from trading stocks. Again, a rather specific charge. Some people thought that might have been aimed at Nancy Pelosi.
A little payback.
And there was this article in the Washington Post interview with his wife, Jill, who talked about Pelosi and sort of the friendship that had been fractured because of this, of her moves to remove him from the ticket, I guess. What did you make of that?
I mean, 4 days, the recriminations begin in earnest, and the spilling and the rush to get the book deal. And I am here for it, Andy. I am just all here for it. It's going to be glorious. I mean, look, it's been a spectacle and a drama to people outside the circles, right? Like everyone knows some stuff really went down between, June and August of 2025 or 2024. And we're about to find out, and I'm just on the edge of my seat. This is just a preview of it. I think the other thing, and this is more of a big picture thing, but it ties into this that no one really appreciates, but it explains a lot, is that the Democrats haven't had a failed presidency in 40 years, right? Like Obama and Clinton, you could take your hits against them, but like they both went out, they won their second term, they ended up fairly popular in office. Historians, I think, will remember their terms perhaps with asterisks, but fondly. This is the first failed Democratic administration since Carter. And when an administration fails, the knives are out the day that people are out the door, and it's going to be spectacular. It's going to be like 44 years of internal Democratic tensions come to the fore, and it's going to be just, I mean, I don't say this as a partisan, just as someone who loves politics. It is going to be glorious to see all this be spilled.
Well, Sean sounds like he's got his popcorn ready. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there was this interview that Jill Biden gave to the Washington Post earlier this week that had some of that in there. I mean, it was, you can tell, she wasn't fully forthcoming, but it's becoming clearer and clearer that, Nancy Pelosi was the one who orchestrated this coup. She tried to deny it. She's denied it on the record multiple times, that she never made a phone call to Joe Biden, never told him to get out of the race. Meanwhile, she was coordinating behind the scenes. And yeah, it is going to be interesting to get the full backstory on how that all went down and what the machinations were behind the scenes. And that will probably happen, as Sean said, in the coming months as people are writing their books and memoirs and whatever. But there's no question that that he's right. This has been a failed administration, and the Democrats still have a lot of soul searching to do as they try and navigate the second coming of Trump and how they're going to be able to position themselves and to recover ground with, not just working class voters, but Hispanic voters. I mean, they can't, if that's a trend that continues and that locks in, they're in big trouble. So they have a lot of work to do. And that work will start, for them. I mean, it should have already started, but we'll see as soon as Biden leaves the scene.
Yeah. Let me just jump in real quick. I mean, you have to understand that the Clinton people are still mad at the Obama people because they think they elbowed Hillary out of the way. And Obama ran almost expressly by trashing Bill Clinton's legacy, saying we need to be more progressive. The Biden people are mad at the Obama people for kind of elbowing Biden out of the way in 2016. The Obama people still kind of think that they run the Democratic Party and probably play. I mean, there are just all these internal tensions that have been there that we've kind of brushed to the side because it always seemed to work out with an okay presidency, and Trump's kind of an asterisk there. They can't be brushed aside anymore. Tom said it's going to be interesting. No, it is going to be spectacular. Even from a purely detached, I like politics point of view, it's just going to be amazing.
All right,
who are you looking forward to hearing from the most, Sean? Like, who's the person who has like Jen O'Malley Dillon or someone from the Biden's inner circle?
Yeah, like the Clains or Kaufman's, the guy that was a senator for like 2 years. Anita Dunn, it's just, the list goes on, and it's going to be like even like senior members of Congress who leave are going to have their stories to tell. It's just you got some of it with Obama after 2010 when that book came out, and they were talking about how Obama was on a three-way call with Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi trying to negotiate the debt limit, and he was going on, and Pelosi hit the mute button. And she and Harry Reid negotiated things while Obama just kind of bloviated. It's that kind of detail when you see how these players really felt about each other. That's going to come out, and it's just going to be, it's going to be wonderful.
All right. Well, something to look forward to. And as those stories come out, I'm sure we'll be talking about them here on Real Clear Politics, where you're listening. I'm Andrew Walworth. I've got Tom Bevan and Sean Trendy with me. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Pam Bondi and some of the hearings up on the Hill. So don't go away.
This is Real Clear Politics on POTUS, Sirius XM Channel 124.
Informing you on the important issues of the day.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on POTUS, Sirius XM Channel 124.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm here with Sean Trendy and Tom Bevan. And Tom, Pam Bondi, second day of hearings today. What do you make of how she's handled herself so far? And what do you make of the way that especially the Democrats have gone after her?
I thought she handled herself well. I mean, I thought she was, did a good job of sort of rebutting any of these questions that came from Democrats, and they were trying to get her to really sort of assert her independence, pledge that she wouldn't prosecute anybody on Trump's enemies list, like all of those kinds of things. And I thought from the stuff that I saw, I didn't see the entire hearing. I saw some clips. I thought she acquitted herself pretty well. I mean, I think she is going to easily win confirmation. I don't think she's one of the ones that was in trouble at all. And I think, she benefited from the fact that Gates was the original nominee, and she's considered a much more acceptable option. And I think she helped herself with her hearing. So I don't think Democrats really laid a glove on her, and nor have they really laid a glove on any of Trump's nominees thus far, but there's still a ways to go, and some controversial nominees yet to come.
Yeah, I guess we're waiting for, it's really the Kennedy hearing that's looming out there now, Sean. But I'm wondering what you made of the hearings. And again, do the Democrats have a strategy here, or is it, just watching these hearings so far, I haven't seen much of what you would call discipline on their part that would sort of add up to sort of a sort of full on attack that connected.
No, I think that's right. And I think this just gets back to what we were talking about a bit in the last segment, that it's been 44 years since there's been a failed Democratic administration. I mean, usually when a Democratic presidency ends and it flips to the Republicans, like Democrats either by circumstance or just by the natural order of things, kind of know what the obvious play is, right? Like Bush, because of how the 2000 election ended, like they were unified and they knew where to go. And same thing, 2016, Trump wins. It's kind of viewed as an accident, like Democrats know where to go. But now there's all these internal tensions and struggles that they're having to face up to that are coming to the fore, and I think are kind of keeping them from having a unified strategy. Now, look, Joe Biden is still president. Soon Donald Trump will be president, and that will give Democrats a little bit of a better idea how to go. But on the specifics, look, I think with Pam Bondi, the Democrats are going to wish that Matt Gaetz had stuck it out, because she is going to be able to do everything Gaetz was going to do, but she's not, but she's competent. Gaetz was competent, but she's not a bomb thrower. She's not going to make it about herself, and so I think she's long term going to be trouble for them, because she's not as easily caricatured. But I also think Tom is right that this is really a warm up for later hearings. I think a lot of what the Bondi hearings served to do was try to lay some type of groundwork for the Patel hearings. And you could see Democrats, to the extent they had any strategy, were trying to set that up. And I agree, like the RFK hearings, those are going to be absolute bombshells to watch.
Yeah, Kash Patel, of course, is the FBI nominee. Tom, I was wondering if you were struck, as I was, by just the visuals of these first two hearings. These young people, Pam Bondi especially, sort of facing off against these ancient senators. It just struck me that it sort of reinforced that there's sort of a generational change happening on the Republican side, even though Trump, as we all know, is I guess what can be our second oldest president or something like that. Carl would know for sure, but these are young people, and they come across as having sort of energy and vim and vigor, if nothing else.
Pam Bondi is not as young as you think. I mean, she looks young, and that's one of the, if you were online, people were posting the fact she's 60. Mm-hmm. She's older than a couple of the senators that were questioning her. And
well, to some of us, 60 is still young, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I get it. But the point is, she looks a lot younger than she actually is. But certainly Pete Hegseth is very young. So, yes, there is something. I mean, I think more than the contrast, the visual contrast about age, to me, what I think the story has been is that the Democrats, particularly with Hegseth, and we talked about this, the way they sort of hounded him and on his personal stuff. I mean, the Tim Kaine questioning was just so over the top, and the way that some of the other senators went after him. And he managed to keep his cool and, not sort of overplay, get indignant or anything. Pam Bondi was a little spicy. I mean, she kind of came back at some of these senators and tried to, push back on some issues. And she had a couple zingers in there. So in that sense, it was a little different. But overall, it's the Democrats they don't have much to work with, at least with these early nominees. And the way they've gone after him, I don't think has redounded to their benefit in any way. Now, that may change. Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, and we mentioned RFK. But certainly these early hearings have gone, I think, if you were scoring them as like a boxing match, I mean, it would be a unanimous decision for all of Trump's appointees.
Yeah. Sean, I mean, the criticism of Trump going into this was that he was not so much choosing a cabinet as he was casting a cabinet, that he was picking people for their communication skills, for their looks, and whether they sort of fit his view of what these people should look and talk like. But when you see these hearings and you see these Pete Hegseth and Pam Bondi in particular communicating pretty effectively, there's a method to the madness, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain point, Trump does cast people, but so what? It's politics. Like, politics in an era of mass communication is to some degree about casting. What I think is interesting about this term, though, is the contrast with the first go around. where Trump had no party or social media apparatus behind him, and so he's like, okay, I can't remember the guy, the CEO of Exxon. He's like, let's make him a cabinet member, the Secretary of State. What was his name?
Rex Tillerson.
Yeah,
Rex
let's
Tillerson, yeah.
Rex. I love Rex, and he owed favors to like Jeff Sessions because he was the first senator to support
To back him.
Yeah, now like these are all serious players. Like, I mean, we can say what you want about Pete Hegseth, maybe, but like for the most part, these cabinet officials are people who are going to be adept at their job, who are qualified for it, and who know how to talk to a cabinet. I think the big difference, and this might lead into some other conversations, is that MAGA and Trump have a universe around them, a media ecosystem around them. The way that like National Review and articles like that used to support the conservative establishment from 80 to 2012. Now Trump has that, people who will back his nominees and who will parry shots. And I think that's something that people aren't used to, that it's not this disorganized mess that it was the first term around. The ecosystem has just completely changed.
Do you see it that way, Tom?
I think that's a great point. I mean, it is not the ragtag, look, I think Donald Trump, and he had this tiny little operation. They were even surprised they won in 2016. They had no experience. They went into office not knowing diddly about what they were getting into. This is a whole different ball game. And you can see that not only in the operation of the campaign, but with the transition and the way that they've aggressively, sort of gone after and made these appointments and the way that they've handled it. It is completely different. And Trump does like people. I mean, he's a TV guy. He watches TV. He likes people who look good and sound good on TV. And again, most of these people, I think there are, very few that I would say that you could point to who have no experience at all in their in the agency or the nomination that they're over the agency they're trying to seek. But they're all very good communicators, and that is part of the job in this day and age. There's no question. And I think so. Trump likes that. He respects that, and that definitely factored into his choice and his choosing of his nominees.
So, Sean, what kind of attorney general do you think Pam Bondi will be?
Well, that's one where the proof is in the pudding, right? I mean, look, she's not Jeff Sessions. She's not a senator who just gets picked out of loyalty and his stance on a couple issues. She's someone who has experience being an actual attorney general for a large state. I believe it's our third largest state now. And she's someone with a politician's background in a competitive state. I think she has the tools as much as any attorney general has the tools. She seems to be competent. She's one that you don't hear any stories about her incompetence like you do with some nominees. So I think, we'll see. The federal bureaucracy is a different beast that I don't think anyone is fully ready to manage. But she seems to be as well off as anyone.
Okay, well, we're going to take a break here, guys. I'm Andrew Walworth. I'm here with Tom Bevan and Sean Trendy. We'll be back right after this.
This is Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. Welcome back to Real Clear Politics with Andrew Walworth. You're listening to Sirius XM's POTUS, Channel 124.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth. I'm here with Sean Trendy and Tom Bevan. And, Sean, picking up on what we were talking about in the last segment, Governor Ron DeSantis did pick the new Florida Attorney General, Ashley Moody, to replace Senator Marco Rubio, who, of course, is the president-elect Donald Trump's Secretary of State choice. Ashley Moody, she's 49 years old, first elected in 2018. Most importantly, she seems to have been in good graces with both Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. That may be the most important requirement for the job right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, to me, a classic DeSantis pick. Not a lot of flash to it, not a celebrity candidate, but, from what I can tell, there's no doubt that Ashley Moody has been a competent attorney general. It's a governing pick. It's someone who, if they don't step on landmines, is probably going to be able to hold the seat for a while and is unlikely to step on landmines. So that's, I think she's a solid pick, and it makes sense for DeSantis.
Tom, what do you make of the pick?
I mean, I don't know much about her, but she seems like a competent, qualified individual from what I've read. And she comes from a, sort of distinguished family. Her father was a judge. Her husband's I think the police chief or in Plant City, where she's from. Only the second woman senator from Florida ever. And to Sean's point, I mean, Florida is not really a competitive state anymore. It really hasn't been for the last couple cycles. And so I fully expect if she is even semi-competent, that she'll have a good grip on that seat for as long as she wants it. And so, she does seem to have good relations with. Look, that's the interesting thing. I mean, DeSantis just played golf with Trump like the other day. Like, I think they're good now. I mean, there was some obviously, harsh words said when they were running against each other, as you would expect, and maybe some bad blood. But it seems like a lot of that has been papered over now. I think they're on the same page, and I think this is a pick that Trump likes and that DeSantis is perfectly happy with. She's been a strong ally of his while he's been governor, and so I don't see any downsides to the pick.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting to me that they didn't pick someone from the Hill, which I sort of understand given the slim majority that the Republicans have there.
Or Byron Donalds got.
Yes.
Republicans had only done better in the election. He might have had a chance.
Right. Yeah. So TikTok is, this sale is supposed to happen by January 19th. This sort of forced sale. The Supreme Court, I guess, could step in before then. But Sean, assuming that they don't, what's going to happen with TikTok? What's the TikTok on TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, the clock is tick-tocking down, if we're going to continue with our bad puns.
This went downhill fast, boys.
I know. You can tell we're reaching the bottom of the show. Yeah, look, it's going to have to shut down or divest, and there's been talk about, Elon or whoever is selling it. It's interesting because Donald Trump has been, trying his best to save the company. I don't think it's because of any deep-seated belief on his part. It's just, my campaign was able to use TikTok effectively. Why would we want to get rid of that? So we'll see. I'm borrowing some 11th hour savior. It's going to have to either shut down or divest.
Does it though? Because this thing is supposed to happen on the 19th and the 20th. My understanding is the president could say, gee, we're in serious negotiations, or TikTok is in serious negotiations, and thus I will extend their ability to operate until those talks come to fruition. That's my understanding. Yeah, that is my understanding of what he could do.
Okay, well, if there is some wiggle room, if there's an out, then I fully expect it to happen because, it doesn't seem like the president wants TikTok to go. And there are plenty of people who certainly users of TikTok and people who are influencers and who are making money on TikTok don't want to see it go away. This was all about national security concerns with China. But as John Tamny pointed out in his piece, which ran in Forbes, which we carried on Real Clear Politics on the front page this morning, he's saying this is Americans who will be selling to Americans. And this is effectively Congress, sort of taking TikTok, not banning it, but actually stealing it or trying to steal it, which is a different way of looking at it, I suppose, and maybe a little bit more provocative, but it certainly is a consequential thing. You have this company that is used by millions and millions and millions of people, this communication platform, social media platform, and it's just going to disappear overnight. That seems crazy. Maybe it'll happen, or maybe there will be some 11th hour solution that allows it to continue until, some other sort of, accommodation can be reached to keep it in business. But it'll be wild if, the next day it shuts down on January 20th.
Yeah. Well, Sean, you make an interesting point, and that the president-elect sort of cares about TikTok, but it doesn't seem to be based on any sort of principle. It's not like a defense of free speech or free markets. It's just that, hey, I kind of like this company. Young people like it. Young people voted for me. I was able to use it. So, is there a rhyme or reason to this? I understand the argument to sell it for, or to force the sale for national security reasons. I don't see a principled argument being made on the other side.
Oh, this is Donald Trump we're talking about. I mean, look, I have always said for 10 years now that Donald Trump sincerely cares about three things: tariffs, illegal immigration, and Donald Trump. You can take it back to his first run or exploratory run for president in 1988. He was talking about tariffs and fair trade. You can go to his run for actual run for the Reform Party ticket in 2000. He was talking about tariffs and illegal immigration. Like, those are constants. I think everything else for him is a negotiation. What can we get out of this? And so he looks at, and like in theory, the TikTok ban should be a crowning accomplishment for him, right? It's the one piece of like hawkish anti-China legislation that he had thought of that's gotten through, and yet he's ready to abandon it because it worked out. TikTok now kind of was seen as working to his advantage. So I think it's all just a tool in negotiations to see how good of a deal he can get.
Wow. Well, guys, we're going to have to leave it there. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth. I've been talking with Tom Bevan and Sean Trendy, but don't go away, because when we come back, I'm going to talk to Charlie Tidmarsh a little bit more about the president's goodbye speech and especially free speech. So don't go away.
This is Real Clear Politics with Andrew Walworth on Sirius XM.
Informed viewpoints spanning the ideological spectrum.
You're listening to Real Clear Politics on POTUS, Sirius XM Channel 124.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth, and my next guest is RCP contributor Charlie Tidmarsh. Charlie writes a regular column for RCP called This Week in Censorship, where he keeps a close eye on the relationship between government and the press. So, Charlie, welcome back to the program.
Great to be back. Thank you.
So we have to start with Wednesday night's farewell speech by President Biden. He painted this pretty dark picture of what America's future might look like. And he complained about social media and focused on one thing in particular. Made me think of you. So let me play that for you and get your reaction.
Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable and protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power.
So this was the capstone to his 52 years in public life. It wasn't a long address. It was under 15 minutes. And I wonder if you were struck, as I was, that he would focus on this sort of technical aspect of social media, third-party fact-checking. So what do you make of his obsession with this?
Yeah, it's very striking. It's not the first time someone sort of at his prominence has brought this up. If we talked about when J.D. Vance mentioned it in the debate. So this issue is definitely gained a level of prominence over the last 2 years that I think is a little bit strange and outsized. I think what's happening is it has very clearly censorship or misinformation policing on social media, on the internet, has very clearly become a political battleground. It's a very salient issue. Obviously, matters related to censorship and misinformation policing were in the Supreme Court last year. And it has the salience of having sort of a direct interface, I think, between the federal government and sort of ordinary American citizens, because many of those citizens can claim to have been impacted by federal government action when their posts were sort of demonetized or removed or de-amplified as a result of the federal government pushing on these platforms to do something about this so-called misinformation. So it's a really salient topic, and it's become a political battleground. And I think, President Biden mentioned in there that I don't forget the verbatim, but they're removing the fact checkers, which is that he's talking to Mark Zuckerberg when he says that, because obviously, and I'm sure we'll hit it, Mark Zuckerberg did just that at Meta, at Facebook and Instagram last week and the week before. So, covering this topic, there are a core group of people and reporters and sort of like digital liberties advocates who really care about your constitutional and First Amendment rights on the internet. And then there are a lot of high profile people who you think do, but end up not really caring that much. They can use it in one direction or another as a bludgeon because it's so salient. I think that's what's happening there. He did it in an interview with USA Today, I think last week, where he said, I think he was asked about some of his chief regrets as he leaves office.
Asked about his chief regrets, and he mentioned two, one of which was that he didn't take enough credit by signing the checks that were sent out, I guess. But the other was that he didn't do enough to fight disinformation.
Yes.
And is it just because they don't like the narrative that's emerged on places like X? We saw the same thing in California, where Governor Newsom has set up his own website to counter disinformation and misinformation about the fires. It seems to be a go-to excuse, if you will, for people in public life to say, oh, you know what? If people only really understood, if they only got the right information, they would support us in whatever we were doing. And then the corollary to that is that by not supporting the government, you are somehow endangering democracy. It seems to me that's the dance, and it seems to me specious, I guess.
Yes.
I think the idea is we want more free speech, not less. And we want, like I say, when you come to this question of third-party fact-checking, you know more about this than I do, so I'd like you to explain. But I mean, how does X do fact-checking? I mean, there is a mechanism for it. It's just they don't use third-party vendors. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. They don't have fact checkers. They don't employ them or contract with them. What X does is they have a feature called Community Notes, which allows ordinary X accounts, non-X employees, to contribute to a fact check beneath a post. And if enough contributors to that fact check with enough credibility in the sort of Community Notes ecosystem contribute and provide their sources and references to either contextualize a given post or to claim that it's inaccurate, if it reaches sort of a critical mass there, a community note will appear under the post in question. Now, that's what Mark Zuckerberg has now announced that he wants to bring to his Meta properties, so Facebook and Instagram. That definitely there's some problems there as well. But the fact checkers, I think, were far less accountable and far more opaque. So I would say more problematic than the community notes. My ideal world is none of it, frankly. Just put my cards out on the table. I like when things stand on their own 2 feet on the internet. But fact checking, I mean, or at least the community notes mechanism has some counterplay, as you say. You can evaluate community notes in real time in public on the platform and see if they're worthy.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's no perfect way to fact check because nobody can agree on what the facts are, even though, we wish that were the case. But when people say, oh, if you're not entitled to your own facts, yes, you are, in a lot of this stuff. And it sounds to me like it's sort of like, it comes like Wikipedia versus the Encyclopedia Britannica. I mean, Wiki is crowdsourced and, not always accurate, but heck, the Encyclopedia Britannica isn't always accurate either. So it's, do you rely on the wisdom of crowds or do you rely on handpicked experts? And I think you could argue either way, but I don't think you can argue strictly from, as the president seems to, that by not using third-party fact-checking, you're somehow given up on the idea that there should be any sorts of ability to respond to misinformation that's put out.
Totally. And I think it does. I agree. I think it comes down to, though, how we are theorizing and imagining these social media platforms, like what purpose are they meant to serve? And the government has some power in how they define this, right? Because Facebook and these other platforms are all protected by something called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which we've discussed, which is an old law that protects these carriers of communication writ large, from any kind of fallout, like legal fallout for claims that are made on the platforms. And so this is that Section 230 reform is sort of dangled over these platforms just kind of continuously, when the government feels like they are enabling too much, harmful content, or
Right.
whatever. And so the government does really have power here in how they want to define the purpose of these social, and the purpose and the sort of liability of these platforms. So that, I mean, I'd love to talk about that too. I think that Section 230 is absolutely the elephant in the room in all of these discussions, as well as antitrust proceedings that are always in the background, and other regulatory frameworks like that.
Yeah. I wanted to, I should let people know I'm talking to Charlie Tidmarsh. He is he writes a column called This Week in Censorship for Real Clear Politics. It's great. You should check it out. And Charlie's one of the guys I go to when I want to learn more about these kinds of issues. We talked earlier about what's going on at the State Department. There's this thing called the Global Engagement Center. It was defunded. Some people think that its function is being sort of shifted around. And one thing we talked about last time we spoke was how Marco Rubio would approach disinformation. And I think I have a little bit of the answer, only because he spoke about it in his hearings. I want to play that for you, Charlie, and see what you think.
Not only have I been someone concerned about foreign disinformation, I've been the target of it from multiple nation states. And I've learned over time that the best way to confront disinformation is through a flood of free speech that allows the counterpoints of view to be heard and understood. I think where we get ourselves into trouble, and we've learned this now, and I think multiple U.S. companies are now admitting, is when we get ourselves into a position of determining what's true and what's not.
Well, it cut out there at the end, but you get the idea, Charlie. When he said that, I thought of you. I said, hey, I think he's channeling Charlie Tidmarsh.
Totally. I remember talking about this with you, I don't know, a couple months ago when we heard that he was going to the State Department, because there was this fascinating sort of dynamic in sort of Trump's orbit between people, who are a little more hawkish in foreign policy, like Marco Rubio, and others who are a bit more protectionist and sort of also don't understand the validity of a project like the Global Engagement Center, which was sort of established, as he said there, to combat foreign influence campaigns and misinformation campaigns. And the problem that a lot of people have observed with the Global Engagement Center is that it was turned domestically, a number of years back, and sort of a lot of its infrastructure was devoted to, before it was dismantled, was devoted to monitoring domestic speech online. And so, yeah, you're right. It was super interesting to me to try to understand how Marco Rubio was going to respond to that, because he has oversight over the Global Engagement Center, and he is someone, at least ostensibly, that cares about mitigating these foreign influence campaigns. So how was he going to respond to the people in his camp now who are saying this is, this entity is completely fraudulent? It claims to counter foreign influence campaigns, but all it's really doing is stifling domestic speech that it doesn't like, and its tidy little workaround is to claim that anyone responsible for that speech is actually Russian, or actually, a toady for Putin or something like that. And there definitely was some of that. I'm not claiming that that's all the Global Engagement Center did, but it spent money on censoring, or at least stifling the lawful speech of Americans. So it's fascinating. My response to that clip really is that I think that he he has internalized a lot of the language around this stuff that maybe you would hear from JD Vance.
Right.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Charlie, we're going to have to leave it there. I appreciate you coming on. We'll have you back soon. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth. I've been talking with Charlie Tidmarsh from Real Clear Politics. We'll be back here tomorrow, so have a great evening and hope you'll join us then.
The
Politics
of
the
United States.
This is POTUS on Sirius XM Channel 124.